Hey, how's it going? So today I'm going to explore what to do when a subscription is made in your tenant and you want to do some post-deployment tasks. But I'm going to do it with one condition. We're not going to use Azure's AZ module, but instead we're going to use REST APIs, just to go deeper into APIs while we're at it with all the recent videos. Now, you may have actually seen my work on this task. When we were working on my function app video for tagging every new resource, in that video I was also making a second script to basically handle this task of what to do with a subscription post-deployment. Well, let's just have a script that will just install and set it up to do things. But I never took it anywhere. Like, it worked flawlessly on my computer that day, but I never uploaded it to Automation Account. And that was because Automation Account's AZ module, it was lagging behind than the one I had on my computer. My computer's PowerShell version is 7.5, and my AZ module at the time of recording is 15 something, whereas the AZ module in Automation Account is 12. Because sometimes the tools in your environment, especially in prod, are stuck in the past, and upgrading them isn't simply just doing the upgrade. There's all these dependencies and all these other services that may break when it's a major upgrade, right? So you may run into similar situations in your environment, and the way to mitigate and work around them is to just not use the module and just go straight to the APIs, because the APIs versions are controlled in the URI itself. So whenever you want to use the latest thing, you just use that, because APIs don't care about any of this, because you're talking to the endpoint directly rather than through some module, and it has versioning baked into the URI. So if you want to upgrade, you just change that for your particular script. Doesn't really matter, doesn't really affect anything else. So let's just pretend our prod environment isn't ready for the upgrades yet, but we need this script up and running, and we can just work around this using the API, right? So let's explore REST APIs, particularly for ARM, in a practical example now. With that, today's lesson. I will walk through a script and show you what it does until now, so you have to watch the other episode if you don't want to. I'll also show the error in Automation Account of it not working, and I'll share how you can bypass this limitation with the API instead of the AZ module. We write it from scratch using API, except for the authent piece for Runbooks Managed Identity. That will still use AZ module, but that doesn't matter. So by the end of it, you have seen enough examples to work with ARM APIs for anything really. And we'll use many of the techniques we picked up from our previous videos and apply them here. And what are we going to do? The script itself will be about adding things for subscriptions that were created so that they can be ready for use in your environment. For example, creating a management resource group inside that subscription. Within that resource group, we will set up the EventGrid infrastructure that will send data to the function app I was talking about, so that any resource that gets created in this subscription going forward will automatically get the creator and the create time tag. And then there will be a section to add resource providers that we want to enable for a subscription. And if you want to disable some, you can do that too, but I'm just going to stick to enabling. And then connecting our subscription to log analytics to collect any kind of logs. And finally, I'm going to start working towards group-based identity architecture. And one of the things I want to do is whenever a subscription is created, I want to have some default ones within them, right? Like a subscription reader and a subscription contributor, so that whenever people need access, they can be assigned access to those roles. And then really after that, it's like we already have the template ready. We just need to add more stuff to it as time goes on. So let's say if you want to expand it to have a theme, you can add Event Hub to the management resource as well to collect that data. Or if you wanted to work with Azure policies, which we will do later on, we can have some steps here to maybe add stuff to Azure policy, or maybe there's a standard procedure for other things and that you want to add. Well, this could be the place to do so. And of course, a lot of this could be handled by other services like Terraform, Bicep, and a few more. I'm just sticking with PowerShell because that's what our course is right now. Maybe in the future, when we're doing Terraform, we will see how we can deploy some of these things there as well. But even with that, I'm going to use the techniques of idempotency to make it Terraform-esque, in the sense that we're not just assigning stuff like typical PowerShell commands would do, but we're actually kind of writing them in a way where you can run the script against the same subscription over and over and it's going to work. So if there's a modification, okay, we'll do that. If there's no modification, we'll just run through it. If it's something new added, it will add it, kind of thing, right? So that as we continue to add stuff to the script, we can constantly just run it over and over against the same subscription, then it's fine. So without further ado, let's begin. And we're back. Okay, so before we start scripting, let me just share with you what I did before. I'll quickly run through it. I'll show you the problem in automation account, and then we'll start creating this from scratch. So here is the script that I had. And the reason why I made it was because when I was making event grids, I was adding all these advanced filters that if I was going to do this again for another subscription, it was going to be a pain in the butt to do. So I decided that let's just make like a post-deployment subscription process, and then we'll add that there. So the script isn't that long. It's very simple. It's parameters at the top, meaning when we run it, we'll have to fill in a subscription name and a region, which not only gives us the ability to run this manually, but we can also trigger it from automations, right? So if there's a subscription creation automation job, it can end with triggering this. So it does that, and then it authenticates. And then after that, it validates the data that came in. So I just have it as plain text here right now, but that was just because I was testing my own stuff. But imagine a subscription name coming in. We need to make sure that it's actually a subscription before we even start working on it, right? So that's what this does. Same with the location. If you provide me Canada Central, well, I need to know that it's actual Azure location and not like, Bob's warehouse or something. And it's like, okay, that's not a location in Azure. So that's what the validation process did. And then after that is when we started creating the EventGrid subscription. And of course, like all event grids, they need to be in a resource group. So that was the next step. And I kind of try to make it idempotent in the sense that if you run this once or you run it many times, it has the same effect. So when the first time you run it, it's going to check to see if a resource group exists. And if it doesn't exist, it creates it. Either way, it's going to store its values in a variable called RG. So the same will happen regardless, right? And then after that, it needs to check if it needs to register EventGrid as a provider in the subscription. And if it already exists, continue. If it doesn't, it will do it. And then after that, then it will start creating the EventGrid topic, and it will just use the fields that it had from before, and it will do that, blah, blah, blah. The location is global because event grids that are targeting a subscription, well, they're targeting a resource that's also global. A subscription doesn't have a location. So that's where that sits. And then once it creates a topic, it finally comes to making the EventGrid subscription. Over here, it points to that particular function app I mentioned that's already created and working in my environment. And again, it's the same process. If it already exists, save it as a variable. If it doesn't exist, create it and save whatever that is as a variable for the next thing, right? And the next thing here is to do an update on the filter. So unlike here where it's, does it exist or does it need to be created? Over here, it's always going to do an update. And the reason is I may in the future change the values that are here. And this is what kind of started this process of making the script, is that I don't want to have to type this in EventGrid where I'm putting in advanced filters, blah, 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 does not contain one of these, blah, 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 does not contain another one of these, and just keep writing each one of those, right? Especially if I plan to ever expand into it, which is what this comment section is indicating, that I can always add more. And then I'm just going to create that EventGrid subscription data. So today we'll recreate this, but then we're going to expand it further. Now my organization also has a log analytics, and I want to make sure that whenever a new subscription is created, it is also being captured. And then also the groups that I mentioned. So what was wrong with this? It was particularly this commandlet right here. My AZ module is version 15 something, and I think this came in version 13, but my automation account AZ module is version 12. So that's where the problem lies, that this commandlet does not work for it, so I'm not able to do this. And you can see it here. When I ran it, everything was going great. It was creating my resource group, whatever, and checking it. It was going through all the steps, and then it came to this commandlet and said, it's not recognized as a commandlet. And then if you go to your runtime environment, you will see that the AZ module that came by default is kind of like older. And then, yeah, of course, I could potentially just add them like I added all these graph modules, but let's just pretend we can't. And let's try to make this whole thing using REST APIs. I'm just going to leave this and I'm going to create a new file. We're literally going to go from scratch here. And I'll call it V2. And this time I'm going to write it with production in mind. I'm going to go a lot deeper with my error handling outputs and my choice of things that I'll use, right? So let's start with parameters again. And just like last time, I'm just going to test on my production subscription. But once we are ready, I'm going to remove those lines and we're going to actually use the parameters at the end for the other 2 subscriptions I have. This is not my actual production server. This is just a lab environment. Don't build your scripts on production servers. All right. And then the next section is the authentication to Azure. I'm just going to copy this part because it's pretty much standard across my scripts at this point. Now, unlike the last one, I'm going to create some variables beforehand. So these are variables that are going to sit at the top of my script whenever it runs before other things happen. So because we are doing APIs, I'm going to do something. You've probably already seen me do this. This is how you get a token from whatever identity you're signed into, right? Oh, this is great and it'll work if I ran it locally. As I mentioned, my automation account is older, so it's AZ modules older. So even the output of what you get from this is older. I'm going to connect as myself, so I'm authenticated. And if I get this token and I go and open it, you may recall that the token value itself was in a secure string. This is not the case in older ones, in older AZ modules. So that when you ran this exact commandlet, you would actually get the raw value and you wouldn't have to convert it. So we need to be careful about that because I may actually just use this here and say everything's good. And when I upload it to automation account, it's not going to work because it's older. So what we will do here is to make it so that it can work for us and it. I'm just going to change this name to retrieve token and make a new value, a new one called token. And we're just going to write this. Retrieve token dot token is secure string question mark, some fancy partial 7 stuff. If you don't know what this is, it's basically going to check to see if this is a secure token. If it is, it's going to convert it to plain text. If it is not, it's just going to store whatever the token value is to this. So either we get the plain text version of it by converting it, or we just get the raw value because it already is converted. This is basically a way to just avoid if-else statements and just write in one line when it's something as simple as this. And then once we have our token, as always, we're going to make a header. I'm going to do it here. I'm putting it here because my script is going to run for minutes. It's not going to take a long time. I don't want to just constantly regenerate my token or constantly write headers all across my script if they're just all using the same token. So I'm just going to store it here and just reference headers further down and just save us some lines, right? Okay, so next, region. People are going to send in a region, right? They can send a region like this. They can probably send it like this. They may send it like lowercase, whatever. Maybe I just want to standardize it and just sanitize it a little. So what I'll say is when region comes in, let's trim the ends. Let's also lower all the characters, and let's also replace any spaces with nothing. And in my last video, I was validating the AZ location by searching for it. I'm actually going to make this more enforced. What I mean is accepted regions equals a list. I'm going to say you're only allowed to have Canada Central or you're allowed to have Canada East. It's something I'm going to be pushing via policy at some point anyways. So might as well just enforce it in my script as well and avoid going through this because this is just more calculations for something that, well, it's 2 values. And you may notice I also use this to add a short form, right? Canada Central's initials are CC, Canada East's initials are CE, right? It'll come in handy because there's something I manually wrote earlier, but let's give people more options. So those are my variables. Let's move on to validation. This is when the script is really going to start. So we can say, this is where I would like outputs to start showing. We'll say running. And what are we going to do? We're going to do the same stuff here, but I'm just going to play around with it a little. I'm going to do try catch. Catch, simple. Right error, could not validate pattern, exception, blah, blah. Here, let's start APIs. The very first API I'm going to run is to get all subscriptions so that I can get a particular one with a particular display name. I'm going to do URI equals https management.azure.com. Not really going to dive into how to get API URIs anymore. So if you want a lesson on that, my first API video covers that enough. We have the headers, we have the URI, and we know the method is get, which doesn't have a body. We have enough to basically trigger an API. So this is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to say subscription equals invoke REST method. And I'm putting it in parentheses because I'm going to extract a particular value. Method get. And what do I want? I want the value. And then what do I want to do? I want to do where object display name equals subscription name. So this will get us our particular subscription. Why don't we start running this so we can see it play by play? All right. You can run the authentication because that's what it's designed for. It's using me. Variables are set. I run this. No output yet, but that's good because something is in subscription or subscription. We should handle the fact that it may not be the case. I'm just gonna move this down. Okay. Let's break the subscription name. Right, so it's something that does not exist in my tenant, and let's run it. And when we open subscription, it's null, right? It's not going to error out, but we want it to error out. So what we can do at that point is if not subscription, as in it's empty, right error, subscription was not found, error action is stop. That will trigger the try to go to the catch, and then we're good. If I run it now, we got our error. Okay, let me fix this again. So what do we want to do after this? We have these accepted regions, right? We also want to validate them, as in whatever value was provided through the parameter, it's also matching one of these. So what we could do is if not accepted region dot contains key, because this is what they have used. I made it into the key, not the value. Region. And now we'll tell them, hey, the region you selected is not supported. These are the ones that are allowed. And then I'm going to save a variable. Because if this is correct, let's actually save a variable called region short for that particular one. So we don't have to constantly reference this. Finally, because everything is good, write output. I'm putting dashes for a reason, by the way. Run this, you'll see the outputs. Okay, that was it. It was that quick. Let me just break this to make sure that our region is also validating. Yes. The script region is not supported. Allowed region Canada East or Canada Central. Perfect. So that will be our two parameters being validated. And if you ever want to add more parameters, we can start validating them in this section. Now let's move forward to our first task in hand, which is configuring our management resource group for the subscription. I'm going to do write output again. And I'm going to make tags variable. So when we make our resource, these are the tags that will get filled. Environment short. But we should have a working subscription now that we can use to get its data. Right. And just to be safe, I'll put some quotes around it. Owner 1. All right, so those will be the tags. Next is the resource group name. Let's use the stuff we have, make it unique every time this runs, because this is not always going to run to the same subscription, right? So what is an element that makes it unique? Well, they're environment shorts, right? So prod, dev, whatever else. The name is going to be RG equals region short. So remember this, CC or CE. We'll inject that here, this right here. Management. I could make this into a variable. You know what? I don't like this. We should also just make this into environment short, like that. Perfect. And then we can just reference that everywhere. Instead, it's a little bit more cleaner. Now, if I run it, this is how my resource group is going to look like. RG, CC, prod, management 001. With that, let's make our URI. Now, our URIs are going to get long, as in every time I use it, I'm going to say this, / resource, right? It's always going to contain this pretty much for most of the things I'm deploying today. So why don't we also do the same here and say URI prefix equals subscription.subscription ID, which will give us the subscriptions ID here. Okay, even better. So then our URI for our resource group is simply this /resource groups /resource group name. I will inject it like this. Now, if I run this line, we get management, blah, 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 subscription ID, resource name that we're going to create, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what are we going to do with the URI? Well, we're going to make a try catch again. Resource group equals invoke rest method. First, we're going to try with a get command. I want to make sure we can actually get the resource. Now, if I run it, I didn't get the right output. That's because this failed and it went to the catch. So I was not able to find it. Therefore, we had error action stop. But if I just run this to show you, it's an error, right? Invalid URI. Hostname could not be parsed. Different error. Should be an error nonetheless. Yes, there we go. The resource group could not be found. Cool. Not all catches are by errors, as in writing an error out. Sometimes about taking action and dealing with it. So this is where we're going to actually create our resource group. Location equals region. Tags equals tags. Yeah, that's it. And then we'll do convert to JSON depth of 20. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And say try catch. And in here we'll do the same thing. Instead of get, it's put. And it has a body. And if it creates it, great. Already exists, using it, did not exist, created. Perfect. And then this catch is where the actual errors will go. I'll show you how I like to write them for APIs. First thing I do is error status equals, whatever is being captured. And then I'll do write error. Text can be anything before this. Fail to create. And all the things I'm about to show you are from the last video. This is how I'm structuring it, this particular part. I'm going to write it in multiple lines, but it's really one line. It's not that much. It's just hard to see if I write it. First thing I'm going to add is squares as a text. Nothing special about this square. And then I'm going to inject in there error status dot exception dot status code dot value. This will give you the error number. Then outside of that, I'll do this again. I'll have a space, and then I'll have the same thing without the error code value, but rather what it is. Like it will say the word bad request over here. And then following that, we'll do so these are what goes into my errors for APIs. Just to get one error line that has all the information that I would personally want. So I'd want the code. I would want the description of the code in case I forget what it is for that moment. And then I'll get the message telling me where the problem is. So let's simulate a situation where we actually break this. And the way to do that is let's just not convert it. Let's just leave it as an object. And if I run this, this is my error. Failed to create resource group. In the square, 400 bad requests. And then this is the error itself, as in the message that came in. And the reason why we converted from JSON is because this actually contains a JSON when you open this. And I particularly only wanted the data that's in message. So I convert it to an object, and then I go 2 layers into the message, and that's what I get out of it, this part right here. And the message section is really good. Like it will tell you exactly where the problems usually are. Oh, and this is a terminator. If this happens, we're not continuing. Kill the job. Try running it and see what happens. Oh, I probably never updated the location when I was demoing a bad example. Let me just make sure. What is region? Yes, Canada. And not Canada. Sorry for my singing. What we should do is run the whole thing. Whole point of it. All right, did not exist, creating. Cool. All right, moving on. Next section is for registering providers for subscriptions. You need to quickly see what that is. This is all the providers you allow into your subscriptions. Sometimes they're resource related, sometimes they're other things related. In here is a whole bunch of stuff that's registered and not registered. So EventGrid probably already is registered, but Event Hub, for example, is not. So in the future, if I ever decide that, hey, I want to install Event Hub on this subscription, it'll fail until this is registered. This is what this section is for. And like I said, you can do the opposite too. If you don't want to have particular providers, you can unregister as well if you like. So the first thing is I'm going to make a array because I may have more in the future. Today we have EventGrid, but I want to account for the fact that we'll have more. We'll do a write output just like we did before. No dash. You can probably start seeing a pattern, right? What I'm trying to do here with the dashes. We'll do a for each provider in providers, and then we'll make the URI. You can search any of these online, by the way. Just type registering providers, ARM API, subscription, blah, 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 blah. And then it will show you how you can use that. I'm just skipping that because we have a lot to get through. And I don't want to get bogged down with how to get the URIs and how to run the APIs anymore. Let's just go straight to using them. Okay, so as I mentioned, everything is within the context of my subscription. We're going to continue that trend and say providers. And as you guessed, the next section is providers, followed by API version. Let's just run this invoke REST method and see what shows up. Okay, the state, it says registered. That's the word. If it says not registered or registered, we'll just work with one of those. So what I'll say is this if equals registered, already registered provider. All right, so we don't need, if we get in here, that means in this loop, we're already good to go. I'm gonna say the word continue to go on to the next thing in the loop. So if it's something like Event Hub, for example, right? And if you want, maybe we'll just add that just for the hell of it, right? This is what it was? Yep. Let's just show you, we'll come back to that, but I'll demo that at the end so we can actually see something being applied. And we'll do another URI, because if this is not continuing, meaning it's staying here, as in it's not registered, let's take the action, and there it is. The API is the same, except for one piece, because we're doing an action called register. There's no body to this because this is the action we're doing, and it's a post. Now it's interesting, sometimes the actions are in the name themselves without a body or anything else, right? So in this case, it's a register. Okay, all over the place. This is the way I like my madness. Start sleep 5. What? I just want to, after all the loop, everything is done, I just want to give it a little break, because sometimes these registrations are slower than whatever we're about to do next, right? So if I register EventGrid and then my next job is to create an EventGrid, it may just be a little too fast, right? The APIs fire really quickly, so it's going to let it know, like, settle down. Ideally, what I should do is make some kind of logic that double checks. Okay, if they're registered, then proceed, but let's not over-engineer this too much right now. Either way, I'm going to run this and see what happens. Well, it already registered, so it came here, right? So let's add another thing to the loop. Registered provider. Okay, perfect. See? That's how I was going to do it. And then if we come back here and refresh, it should show up as the state has changed. Registering. See this? This is what I'm talking about. It could take a while. We should do a while loop, but it's okay. Okay, now let's get to creating our EventGrid. We'll start with the EventGrid topic. So let's configure that. First is the EventGrid topic's name. We'll call it event topic name. EventGrid topic. What is it targeting? I'll say subscription. And then we'll do the environment short again. Like that. Perfect. URI. Same thing again. URI prefix resource group. Now we're going down the list. And what we're collecting is RG right here. A resource group that got created in my tenant. RG.name providers. Microsoft. I guess I never demo showed it. Let me just quickly show you. When we ran our script past that resource group part, it actually created it, right? So moving on. API version, just like that. That will be our URI. You see, it's getting long. That's why, I use the prefix. And what are we going to do? We're going to do the exact same thing that we did for our group here, which is the try catch process. So we're going to try to see if it exists, and if it doesn't, we'll create it. Event topic this time equals look, and then do a catch. So if it exists, it will say it's using that. Perfect. And then it will have that value to collect more stuff about it. But if it doesn't, body equals a whole bunch of stuff, right? Location is one of them. And because EventGrid topic for subscriptions is for a resource that is global, right? A subscription doesn't sit in Canada Central, Canada East. Like we only got the region for the resource group. Like this is going to be everywhere. And then we need to define what kind of EventGrid topic it is. If you've never worked with EventGrid, I have 2 videos on it. After that, this will all make sense. Source equals our subscription ID, our subscriptions resource ID, which is subscriptions with an S / our sub ID, which, what was it? Was it just subscription? It was, right? And then it was this particular one. I mean, I guess I could just source. Yeah. So that's the resource ID. And then we'll say topic type equals Microsoft resources subscriptions, like that. And all right, maybe we want to add tags. We have that tag variable, right? Let's just use that. Same as LB. Yep, that's fine. Finally, convert to. So that will have our body ready. And then what we can do is try to create it as our next step. Event topic equals put method, all the standard stuff, our output, and then we'll do the same error status stuff that we had earlier right here. Do a throw with it as well. Only thing I'll change, instead of it saying failed to create resource group, we'll say failed to create EventGrid topic. And if all is well, this should work. Configuring successfully created. If I go here, should be provisioning it. Yeah, perfect. Got created. And it's a global type and it's pointing to our subscription. Perfect. And like I said, we can always keep running this over and over on top of it. Now it's just going to get it instead of, so now it's just going to get it from here rather than go through this whole process. What's crazy is, to give a little segue, like I don't even need to do all this. On some level, like if I just run this again, right here, let me empty out this variable, right? So event topic has nothing, right? If I run put on an existing service, it gives you a return. It doesn't error out like PowerShell, right? Kind of touched on this before, and I said this is what makes the item potent, right? So it's almost behaving like a get command. Now, the reason why I'm not using this is, what if I decide that, hey, I want to go in here and I want to modify something here, right? I want to go here and change something, or I want to go into one of these settings and change something. If I didn't assign it here and this ran again, it would revert those settings back. This is a great way if you wanted to do drift detection, where you say anytime it drifts, bring it back. I'm not doing that here. When it comes to using Terraform and stuff like that, yeah, I'm definitely gonna explore that deeper. And I'm not gonna have like this kind of like get and put setup, but this is just because I am trying not to make it detecting the drift and constantly modifying in that sense. It will only create it. So yeah, like everything up until now can be run over and over and over. And if something exists, it captures its values. And if it doesn't exist, it will create it and capture whatever got created as values. The next section is where we're going to actually use what I just mentioned. So configure EventGrid subscription. This is something where if I run it once, it will create it. I run it a second time, it could create it, but because nothing has changed, it won't make anything different. And then if I modify and run it, then it will make the changes kind of thing. So in other words, no get this time. We're going to go straight to a put. And another thing is, if you recall from my last video, if you worked on it, in that I first created the subscription, because that's just how AZ PowerShell command is, right? And I kind of do the same thing, try catch, where it's like, if it exists, use it. If it doesn't exist, don't use it. And then after that, I was doing a modification on it, right? Because there's no update and create. It's just create, update, or get. Over here, I'm actually going to put it all together and say, just use the put. Capture a return, whether it creates it, exists, or whatever, we'll do that. If you need to update it, do that. If you need to create it, do that. All good, right? Power of put. So, EventGrid subscription. First thing is, what's the name? I'm actually going to hard code it. It's always going to be called this. It's a service within a resource, right? Kind of thing. So the top is going to be within a topic. And it's always going to point to the same function. So I'm going to put its function ID here. And my function app is this particular one. And the function within it is this particular one right here, EventGrid resource owner time tagger. That's what I'm trying to associate all these event grids to. So I'm going to have a variable for that name, and I'm going to have a resource ID that's going to point to its parent, but it's going to allow me to change the name. In case it's a version 2 and we're ready to use that, I can just say v2 because that's another function I added. I just wanted to have that option and not just hard code this as one line. Fine. Moving on, let's make our URI for our subscription. URI equals, same thing, prefix and all that. I'm just going to paste it this time. We get the idea. So the prefix, resource group, then the topic, and then the sub name that we're associating it with. If I run that, it's even longer now. Now to do the equivalent of this without all this command and having a key and then having a value, we can just do it all as one big object and just put it into something. Advanced filters, an array, because I may have multiple in it. Within it is one hash table. So this is going to be equivalent of all this right here. And then array was this, right? So operation name equals string not contained. Like, thank God. I don't know if you watched that video and I showed you how we got this and what it meant. You're like, why couldn't this just be like a setting rather than a confusing, this weird commandlet to actually put this stuff in, right? Like, thank God. Key data dot operation name and then the values. And this is a list. I'll copy it over like that. And then I'll leave a hint here. So if I want to add more, we can just add more like this. Now I'm just going to leave this as this. I'm not going to convert this to JSON. I'm actually going to put this within a body. So this is called advanced filters. Next is what we're going to do is build a body. The body equals. So this one is actually a structure where body has something called properties that has all the values. Let me actually show you. Why don't I show you this time? Yeah, why not? This is actually at least a little interesting. So you type the resource, you type REST API, and you type the word put. That's what we're doing. We're creating or updating. So this is where I got the URI. Scope just means it could be a subscription and an ID as one level of scope, or it could be going down into resources and whatever else it could be. Like whatever your scope is, like all that, put that here. So in our case, it was the resource group and the subscription. And then it tells you the parameters you can add. And then it shows the request body. So this is where it kind of gave us all the information on what we can add here, right? Like for example, for me, it's destination and there's one called filter. Yeah. The destination is going to point to an endpoint. Filter is where we're going to add all our advanced topics. And then here's an example. It shows you, right? Here you point to something and here you can write your filters. It's an HTTP. I just converted to PowerShell and then that's how we went forward. Okay. That was confusion before, at least now you know. The properties. The first thing I said is destination. Second thing I mentioned is called filter. Filter. And then within it are also hash tables. This one has an endpoint type. Don't trust IntelliSense at this point. They won't know. So what is the resource ID? It's right here for the function app. So this is how we tell the subscription that that's the endpoint we're setting up right here. Here's this ID. Here's this type. Okay, next thing is filters. So this is included event type equals like that, a list. And all it is one thing. This is not advanced filters, by the way. This is, I'll show you this later. This is just saying on what things are we capturing? We're capturing on resource, write, success. Anytime a change occurs in the subscription. And then here is where we say advanced filters equals. Well, we've already written it the way it's supposed to be written, so we can just mention the variable and then convert to JSON depth of 20. Ooh, okay. All right. Let's just have a look at how everything looks so far. Not contained. Fine. Now we'll fix it later. Let's do try. Try is a put method. Same thing as before, so I'm just going to paste that. This time I'll store it in some variable called event sub in case we need to do anything more, but I don't think so. And then the catch is the same concept, error, and then we're just writing out our status code, all that stuff. Let's give it a shot and see how she rolls. Access token expired. Yeah, this is going to happen when you're writing your scripts with tokens. I just have to come up here and run these lines again. Or realistically, let's just run the whole thing again. And we're back. Hard sleep has started. Okay, there was something wrong. Good. Oh, it's not operation name. It's operator type. Remember when I said don't trust IntelliSense? Yeah. Okay, cool. It got created. Let's have a look. There it is, our new resource tagging connected to our function app, and it is picking up all the stuff. Cool. Next, pretty easy to do is let's just configure a log analytics for the subscription. I do mean configure, not create. I already have a log analytics. Workspace. This one. Now I'm going to just send all logs to it. Enter ID, subscriptions, etc., for my environment. Whatever it is for you, do you. And how are we going to do it? Just to show you visually is when you're in a subscription, you go to one and you go to activity log, you get all these activities that are occurring, right? If you hit export activity logs, it's not exporting a file, but it's actually exporting it to something like to log analytics, storage accounts, etc. If we click add diagnostic setting, you can select what kind of things you want to send. I'm just going to do administrative, right? So the actions that take place. And then I'm going to say send to log analytics workspace. I'm going to find it in my environment. It's like that. And then you give it a diagnostic name. So we'll call it whatever test and hit save. I'm not going to do that because we're going to do this exact process in PowerShell. So let's just do it there. And then we'll see it show up here. All right, the first thing is let's give it a name for the diagnostic. Diag setting name equals. And then we need while we're here, we also need our workspace ID. That you can easily capture from here, right? And then with that data, let's create our URI equals prefix. What are we doing? We're setting up a diagnostic setting, right? All this. It follows a similar structure as EventGrid subscription where the body has a properties. So we do that. So what do we add in the properties? Well, we pointed to our log analytics. So this is a diagnostic setting we're configuring. We're not configuring log analytics per se, right? But we're going to point it to a workspace. That's what this is, workspace ID, which we've captured right here. We'll send the data to that. What are we sending? Sending logs such as, I'm going to do it in one page. I'm just going to do it in one rather than splitting it, pretty short. Administrative. And when you have multiple lines, you can do this. Enabled equals true. I'm just going to make this hash table in one line. Simple enough that we don't need to add more. But if you ever wanted to add, let's say, policy or something like that, let's just leave a comment so future me knows. Want to add more stuff? This is how you do it. And then we'll convert this to JSON. And then same process, try catch. It's like pretty much a theme now, right? Like my structure here. Create it. And then we're going to do a catch. And this also is a put, right? I'm saying from my script itself, this is where this is managed. Like if I modify this in the future, I use the same line. If it's the same, who cares? All right, let's run this. Something went wrong. Version is required for all requests. True. True, gotta have a $sign. That probably is it for that. Okay, so the next thing is missing API version parameter. Oh yeah, that would happen. Now, this is simply because I am not putting it like this. I already explained why that's a problem before, so I'm going to repeat myself. Here we go. Success, diagnostic setting, blah, 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 configure for blah, 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 blah. Cool. Okay, so that, just like that, now our subscription has event grids, it has a resource group, it has log analytics. Let's next create groups, and then let's assign them RBAC to the subscription. And by groups, I mean Enter ID groups. And by that, I mean we're going to have to connect to Graph. So configure groups and RBAC for them. The nice thing is my managed identity of my server also has a perm, so I don't need to do anything for him. We'll do the same thing we did to get our token. Exact same process, but this time for Graph. So we'll point it to Graph, and we'll double check to see if it's a secure string value or not. And depending on which one it is, it will capture that value and store it in an MG token. I am not going to replace my other token. I'm going to keep this alongside. And in my header, I'm going to call it MG headers. I'm not going to replace that either. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, we need a particular URI. I'm just going to make it a variable, not that long. I'm going to go to HTTPS, and we have done this. Graph.microsoft.com v1.0/groups. So this will be our URI. And what are we going to do? We're going to create 2 groups and assign them permissions for every single subscription we have. So in the future, if any user needs reader access, something like that, we don't assign them directly. We give them access to the group. So I'll say EntraGroups. So this is where we can make a list. So as of today, it's 2, but if you want to expand on it, this is where you could add stuff. And we'll say group name. So the first item in the thing will be a group name, AZ, SG, sub. And then we'll use that event short. So if we make this for other subscriptions, it sounds unique. Call it reader. And role reader. Now, what does this role mean? It has nothing to do with EntraID. This is somewhere where I'm storing what RBAC permission I will grant this group. This is the name we'll create, and then this is the RBAC assignment we'll give. Same thing here, but instead of reader, it is contributor. All right, let's just run up to here. So make sure we're connected and everything. Okay, cool. All right, let's do this. For each EntraGroup.ns, EntraGroup. Our URI, that's right here, the group one, is what we're going to use here. First, URI equals group URI plus. We're going to use a filter. We're going to query our groups for a display name where it equals group name. Because it's using equals and not equals, we don't need consistency level set to eventual. And then let's make our variable that we're going to actually have storing our outputs of whatever gets created or gets collected. Now, unlike the put, there's no put method with graph, so it's either post or get. So we don't have that choice of, running the same command kind of thing. So get method, URI, headers, MG headers, dot value. I'm going to run this very slowly because once we start adding in the RBAC stuff, okay, let's just see what happens. Nothing happens because there's nothing in here because these groups are not created. So if that's the case and there's no value, let's say if not our group, not is just a fancy way of saying null, but also empty. Pretty good to use. Body equals dirt. All right, what do we usually put in a group? Display name, mail enabled, mail nickname, security enabled, description. Security enabled is set to true, mail enabled set to false. Display name is our EntraGroup group name. Mail nickname, let's just do the same thing. And then just to make sure uppercase, say lower. And then for description, we can do a subscription access group for subscription name with EntraID role access. Cool. Convert to JSON. Up to 10, sure. And let's do try catch. The same thing because this is empty. Let's fill it. Target group equals invoke REST method post URI group. Yeah. That's all we're targeting. All the data is in here. There we go. Yeah, this URI is just to filter and do a get. Okay. Yep. Headers is MG headers. The body is body. Error action. Stop. Probably should have added my catches. Do else here. I'm doing else because I'm going to continue in here. So either created a group or got a group. Cool. Give it a shot. Created a group. Perfect. And if I run it again, it will say found group. Yep. I broke it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Must have kind of dragged it somehow. Fine. Nothing drastic occurred. So. Okay. Oh, that's weird. Where's my URI? God damn it. Not like. Okay. Now, okay. Thank God. Found group. Yeah, see, this is a problem. We're not careful. If we're not careful with that logic there and mess up, yep, you will end up doing this. Find, get them all. Now my logic should be sound and not make the kind of mistake, so we should be good to go going forward, right? It's not like put. It won't try to create it. Okay, and that wasn't even the hard part. Why are we already choking? All right, try. What are we going to do in this try? We're going to create our role assignment. I'm just going to catch, right? Be able to assign role. A few things that are going to happen here that are kind of handled for you when you use AZ module, but when you're using APIs, it's a little bit more cumbersome. So the first thing you need is you need to get the role definition, like as in reader and all that. We need its ID, right? So there is going to be a get command first. We'll actually walk through this one. Role definition, IA, REST API. So you're going to have to use this command. Get this. Let's just paste that here. So our scope is up to here is going to be our prefix anyways. And then it's going to go to here to get that. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? I don't need to demo that one. What we'll say here is get role definition. And with that, our URI. Then we have our role definition being collected, but it's going to collect all. So store in a variable, invoke REST method get. Let's just run these two lines and see what shows up. Pretty much every role possible for that scope, as in the resource, the subscription itself. But we don't need to put it in our for each, right? Like this kind of tells us, hey, run this again, and you're basically doing the same query. You're just getting this big data set for no reason when you could have just had it stored in a variable earlier. What I'm actually going to do, I'm going to suggest we take this out. Before we do that, let me just show you where we're headed first. So I'll call this role definitions. I'll call this role definition. And that is going to be one of these. Let's just run this again so it works with the S. And then let's do format list. So it's kind of readable. Okay. Doesn't really give us a name yet, right? That's because we have to go under another section, properties. And then here are all the names, right? Landing zone, account owner, etc., etc. So we need to extract that up. Pretty easy to do. Actually, it's not that complicated. So we were just doing where object on it. Object, $, properties, role name equals our EntraGroups role. EntraGroup.role. If I run this, I do format list. This one, for example, is getting our contributor. So what I propose is we take this out. So we're not, especially let's say you added like 20 groups and each one has its own role. We don't want to just run this query 20 times. Is what I'm trying to say here. We'll store that here. Collect that stuff and store it in role definitions. And then here, all we do is for group, okay, easy peasy, save some lines. Okay, now the fun part begins. Assigning roles. We'll say put, because it is a put. Role assignments REST API. You need to generate a GUID for it when you make it. This isn't the worst thing, right? Here's where you generate that GUID, and then in the body is where you'll define all the stuff, like the role definition, the reader to that scope, or the principal ID of who is getting assigned, and even a type if you like if it's a service principal or group, etc., etc. But there's one problem with the GUID process is if you're not careful, is that if you're trying to make this into idempotent and you're just using any GUID, as in randomly generated every single time, the second time it runs on the put, it's not gonna be able to find the same one because you generated a new GUID each time, right? So you need the GUID to be generated to be the exact same one with some condition somehow. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll show you visually and then it'll make sense. Okay, so let's say generate deterministic GUID. So it's always the same for every unique group. So every unique group we create, it's always going to be the same for each of them whenever this whole script runs. That's the whole point of the script. We run it multiple times. All right, so how it works is we make a seed. Seed equals whatever it is you want. You can put gibberish. In order for me to make it make sense with the things I am working with, well, I am particularly targeting when it's a particular subscription, particular group, and a particular role. Those things are probably a good random generator for me. So I'm actually going to write all that just like that. All right, just some, and again, like I said, you put anything in here. If I do this and do seed, there it is. That's the seed that I'm going to use to always get the same GUID. That's what I'm trying to say. So the next few lines are all .NET. There is a point I'm going to delve more into .NET, but as of right now, we'll just power through it a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create service provider for cryptography. As far as I'm aware, I think that's what it is. And all it does is create that. So if I type MD5, whatever, that's what it creates. The second thing is we're going to convert our seed into some byte information. So it looks like gibberish. Then we're going to use this MD5 thing to create a hash, still written in bytes. Whatever. We're going to use the value that's in here to generate a GUID. Okay, this is going to be our GUID this time for this. And now the cool thing is I'm actually going to output it. Every time this is run, it is exactly the same. Whereas the normal way, which is this, like we could have just typed that and be done with it. It's unique every time, right? I need it to be the same whenever it is this. So this time, this will ensure that the GUID is always the same. And this is all because of put. Put demands it in its URI, the GUID, right? So now we get to the point where I'll remove this, assigning the role, and we're going to say URI equals our link. And it's going to have that GUID right in there. If I run this, remove that typo, run this, our URI is generated. But this will always be the same. If you're just creating that other line that I showed you to just generate a random GUID, it's fine. Just use that. But if you're going to create it, and then you're going to run that same script again to interact with the same principle, right? Well, it's going to break and say, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is a way just to get around that problem. Either way, URI, let's make our body. Body equal properties equals role definition ID. And there was principal ID of our user. And then there was principal type, not user group. Yeah, this would be the target group ID right here. Normalize that. And this would be the role definition ID, as in contributor or reader. So this group is going to get contributor, but if you recall, this isn't just contributor. It actually points to where as well, right? The ID is also pointing to a particular place, which is our subscription. Like if this is assigning to a resource, it would have more into that. It would have more stuff here. And then finally, we have our API call. Just going to do it here. And that should do it. Let's give it a shot. Fingers crossed. No. Invoke REST method. URI. Which one? Line 49. No. Yeah. Always something. Convert to JSON. Yeah, so add the ID, convert to JSON. Okay. Fingers crossed. Perfect. See, now if I run it, it still works. See, I ran it again and it still worked. If instead of all this, I had just used this, it would break every second time. The first time I ran it, it would be great, but after any future runs, it would not. And then finally, close our script like this. Do one final run, the whole thing. Boom, boom, boom. See how she goes. There's that start sleep process we gotta wait on now. That'll be extremely fast. Okay. Everything looks good. Let's confirm. So one was, is there a diagnostic setting present here? Answer is yes, it's there. It's connected to our log analytics. Second was, I go to my IAM. Second is when I go here, it has access, which is great. It has a reader access and it has a contributor access. Perfect. Yeah, that's like pretty much the script that I was trying to show today. Of course, there's always more things you can add too, set up some cost alerts, you could do that here. Or if you have PIM enabled, maybe the groups for contributor aren't going to have permanent access. They're going to have just in time, right? Kind of stuff. And yeah, like I'll leave it open-ended for now for myself. In the future, if I have more ideas coming in or more things I need to do, I'll just add it to this script and just run it against the subscriptions once again. Now let's take this to automation account. I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to paste over this old one I had here. I'm over that one. And then this is going to be our new script going forward. And the one thing I will do, comment out this. We're not done testing, and we're going to test out how it works with the parameters. And then I'll run it against one of my other subscriptions after that, or all of them really. So let's push it up to Git and get it into our automation account. Git add dot git commit m upgrade git push. Ooh. And now we wait for it to show up. Okay, it has synced. Moment of truth. Look at all those fails. And if you've never seen how parameters work, how parameters look in Runbooks, if you hit start, look at that. Shows up right there. So you must provide the values here. So I'm going to do it to corporate management, the subscription I'm in right now. And I'm going to say Canada Central. And I'm going to hit start. And let's see how she rolls. Okay, it failed. Bad request. Principal does not exist in the directory. So it looks like it created the group and then tried to sign it way too fast. Let's double check and confirm if that's true. And if it is, we may have to add a little delay. Yeah, so it signed one and then it created the next one because of I had a throw before that ended it here in between these two. But this time, the second one, it created the group, but then it didn't sign it. So if I run it again, it will work. Which leads me to say, let's add a little sleepy time between the two and say start sleep 5. 5? Hopefully that's enough. If not, whatever. I will increase it and then we'll go from there. APIs are too fast for our systems, I guess. Not the worst problem to have. Time to slow down. All right, let's do 30. I don't care. And I'll run into my last subscription. I could also break this, by the way. Like I could have EntraGroups created earlier, and at the end I assign the permissions later, kind of thing. Because I only need the mgconf API for this section, right? But that's okay. It's okay. Okay, that worked. It was a timer issue between creating the group and then assigning that group roles. Normally, I guess you don't really create a group and then assign it roles right away, so it probably got thrown off by that. But yeah, it's working. So if you add like a 30-second delay or even maybe 15, 20, I don't know, you're going to have to explore and find out what the sweet spot is. Or if you want, you could break this in half and say the groups, create them first because that's the only time you're using the MG tokens, right? For a graph, and then the role assignment section will do it at the end so that by the time it gets down to it, you know, it should be cleared up and ready to be done. And then we can put it in a while loop too, right? If that's not the case and you don't want to do start sleep, you can say while whatever, just keep trying. Okay. Now it's there. Okay, perfect, done. And good to go too. But either way, I'm getting tired. I'm going to say good enough for now. And yeah, so that's the end of today's lesson. I hope it's insightful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.